Boss fires pregnant employee without knowing she was the company owner's daughter-in-law. Jennifer Miller clutched the dismissal papers tightly as she tried to hold back the tears streaming down her face. At 7 months pregnant, she never imagined she'd be let go in such a humiliating way by the regional manager of the pharmacy chain where she'd worked for 2 years. That Tuesday morning, Margaret Thompson had called Jennifer into her office with her usual cold stare. The employee already expected some unfair criticism, as over the past few months, her boss's taunts had only increased as her belly grew. "Jennifer, due to cost-cutting measures the company is implementing, we unfortunately have to let some employees go," Margaret said, pretending to glance at some papers. "And you're on the list." "But Ms. Thompson, my performance has always been excellent. I've never missed a day, I always arrive early, and—" "Listen here, sweetheart," the manager interrupted with a sarcastic smile. "Pregnant employees are nothing but trouble. Soon you'll want maternity leave, then you'll miss work because of the baby. Not to mention you'll be slow and tired. Best to nip the problem in the bud." Jennifer felt her world collapse. She needed that job more than ever, especially with the baby on the way. But she couldn't reveal her true identity. She had chosen to work anonymously to prove her worth, without relying on her husband's last name. "Please give me a chance. I can improve in any area that—" "No discussion. Pack your things and leave. The papers are already ready." Margaret cut her off, sliding the documents across the desk. Heartbroken, Jennifer signed the termination papers. Her co-workers watched in silence, some shaking their heads in disapproval, but no one dared to confront the feared manager. Carrying a small box with her personal belongings, Jennifer left the pharmacy, trying to maintain her dignity. On the streets of New York City, she walked slowly, one hand supporting her belly and the other holding the box, wondering how she'd tell her husband she'd lost her job. Richard Reynolds had been restless that morning. His daughter-in-law Jennifer had disappeared the night before without explaining anything to the family. The 65-year-old businessman, owner of the largest pharmacy chain in the metropolitan area, decided to personally check some branches to see if he could find any clues about her whereabouts. When he arrived at the downtown location, he found Margaret Thompson organizing some papers at her desk. The manager was surprised by her boss's unexpected visit. "Mr. Reynolds, what an honor to have you here. I was just organizing the productivity reports," she said, trying to impress him. "Margaret, I'm looking for an employee. A pregnant woman, brunette, long hair. Do you know her?" The manager smiled smugly, thinking she had an opportunity to boast. "Oh, you must mean Jennifer Miller, but you don't need to worry about her. I just fired her yesterday. Pregnant employees only slow down the team's performance. I did the company a favor." Richard felt his blood run cold. His breathing grew heavy as he processed what he'd just heard. "What do you mean you fired Jennifer Miller?" he asked, struggling to stay calm. "Sir, she was 7 months pregnant. Soon she'd ask for leave, then miss work because of the baby. It was a lost investment. I preferred to cut costs before it became a bigger problem," Margaret explained, proud of her decision. "Show me her termination papers, now." Margaret was taken aback by her boss's stern tone, but went to retrieve the documents. As Richard read them, his expression grew darker by the second. There was the full name of his daughter-in-law, Jennifer Miller Reynolds. "Margaret, do you know who this woman you fired is?" "Of course, she was just a regular employee. Some receptionist," replied the manager, starting to get nervous from the tense atmosphere. "This regular employee is my daughter-in-law, my son's wife. And you humiliated and fired her for being pregnant with my grandchild." Margaret's face drained of all color. Her legs trembled, and she had to lean on the desk to keep from falling. The boss she had always respected stood before her, eyes filled with anger, exposing the biggest mistake of her career. "Mr. Richard, I didn't know. She never said anything about—" "And why should she? Does an employee need to announce she's part of the boss's family to be treated with dignity?" Richard grabbed his phone and called his son, who answered on the first ring. "Dad, did you find any news about Jennifer?" "I did. Your wife was working here at the company and was fired yesterday for being pregnant. Come here right now." While waiting for Michael to arrive, Richard began investigating the situation more thoroughly. He called other employees to speak privately, and discovered Margaret had a history of disrespectful treatment toward pregnant employees. Carol, one of the senior staff members, decided to speak the truth. "Mr. Richard, Jennifer was the best employee we had. She always arrived early, stayed late when needed, and helped all her co-workers. Even while pregnant, she never complained or missed a single day." "Then why did no one tell me about the manager's behavior?" "We were afraid, sir. Margaret always threatened to fire anyone who complained about her. She said she had connections and that any complaint would be ignored." Richard felt a mix of anger and sadness. His company, which he had built with such pride based on family values, was being tarnished by prejudiced behavior he would never condone. Michael arrived at the pharmacy 20 minutes later, his face etched with worry. When he saw his father's and the manager's expressions, he knew something very serious had happened. "Dad, where's Jennifer?" "Son, your wife was working here anonymously, and she was fired yesterday by this woman," Richard said, pointing at Margaret. "She was humiliated and let go for being pregnant." Michael looked at the manager with an expression of disbelief and outrage. "What do you mean she was working here? Why didn't she tell me?" "That's something you'll have to ask her. But first, we're handling this situation," Richard said, turning back to Margaret. "I want to see all the records of employees you've fired in the last 2 years. Now." Margaret tried to protest, but knew she had no choice. With shaking hands, she went to retrieve the requested files. Meanwhile, Richard asked Carol to show the security camera footage from the past few months. The recordings revealed shocking scenes. Margaret constantly belittled Jennifer, made snide remarks about her pregnancy, and overloaded her with extra tasks. In one clip, Jennifer could be seen holding back tears after yet another public humiliation. "My God," Michael whispered. "How did she endure all this alone?" When Margaret returned with the documents, Richard uncovered something even worse. Over the past 2 years, 3 other pregnant employees had been fired by the manager, all under similar cost-cutting justifications. "Margaret, you've established a pattern of discrimination against pregnant women in my company," Richard said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "This isn't just morally wrong, it's criminal." "Mr. Richard, I was only thinking of the company's interests. Pregnant employees are expensive and—" "Shut your mouth," Richard snapped. "You turned my business into a hostile environment for working women. This goes against everything I believe in." Michael, who had been in shock until then, finally exploded. "Where does she live? I need to find my wife and apologize for what she went through." Richard took Jennifer's address from her documents, and the two left the pharmacy, leaving Margaret alone with the weight of her actions. Before leaving, Richard turned one last time. "You're suspended until further notice. And rest assured, this isn't over." Jennifer was in her small apartment in Queens, lying on the couch with a cold compress on her forehead. The stress of being fired had triggered a severe headache and mild contractions, making her even more worried about the baby. When she heard the doorbell, she thought it might be a neighbor, but upon opening the door, she found her husband and father-in-law with expressions of concern and guilt. "Jennifer," Michael said, trying to hug her. "Why didn't you tell me you were working at Dad's company?" She pulled away slightly, still hurt and confused. "Because I wanted to prove I could succeed on my own merit. After my parents passed, I promised them I'd be a strong, independent woman," she said, her voice trembling. "But I ended up being humiliated just the same." Richard stepped forward carefully. "Jennifer, forgive me. If I'd known you were there, this never would have happened. But I want you to know I won't tolerate this kind of discrimination in my company." "You don't understand," she said, sinking heavily onto the couch. "I didn't want to be treated like the boss's daughter-in-law. I wanted to be respected as a good employee. But the manager humiliated me for being pregnant, not for being your daughter-in-law." Michael knelt beside his wife. "Sweetheart, why did you hide this from me? We could have talked, found a solution together." "Because you always protect me from everything. I needed to know I could handle things on my own, especially now that I'm going to be a mother," Jennifer said, rubbing her belly. "But maybe I was naive." Richard sat in the armchair across from them. "Jennifer, you weren't naive. You were brave. And I'm sorry if my company became a place where a pregnant woman doesn't feel safe. At that moment, Jennifer felt a stronger contraction and winced in pain. Oh, she groaned, bending forward. What's wrong? Michael asked, alarmed. I think I need to go to the hospital. The contractions have been getting stronger since yesterday. Richard rushed to grab the car keys while Michael helped his wife up. On the way to the hospital, Jennifer opened up more about her experience at the pharmacy. Michael, your employee treated me like dead weight. She said pregnant women only bring losses. I tried working even harder to prove her wrong, but nothing I did was enough. This will be fixed, love, I promise, Michael said, holding her hand. At the hospital, after the doctors examined Jennifer and confirmed it was just stress-induced contractions, Richard decided to take stronger action. I'm ordering a full audit of the company. I want to know if there are other cases like yours. Dad, I just want to make sure no other woman goes through what I did. No woman should be punished for bringing life into this world. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. In the following days, Richard hired a specialized firm to conduct a full internal audit. What they found was even worse than they'd imagined. Margaret wasn't just discriminating against pregnant employees, she was also embezzling funds meant for maternity benefits. The manager had created a scheme where she forced pregnant employees to resign before maternity leave, saving money that she later used to inflate her own productivity bonuses. Richard, we found evidence that she falsified performance reports to justify the terminations, said Amanda Wilson, the lead auditor. Moreover, she threatened other employees to keep them from reporting the scheme. How could this go unnoticed for so long? She was very clever. She always fired one pregnant employee at a time, spacing them out by months, and she picked those she was sure wouldn't fight for their rights. Richard felt ashamed. His company, which he had always considered a family, had become a toxic environment under his own supervision. Meanwhile, Jennifer was at home trying to recover from the stress when she received an unexpected visit. Her mother-in-law, Mrs. Elizabeth, appeared at the door with a worried expression. Jennifer, may I come in? I need to talk to you. The two women had never been very close. Mrs. Elizabeth had always been polite but distant, and Jennifer had always felt she wasn't fully accepted by the family. Of course, Mrs. Elizabeth, please come in. Jennifer, Richard told me everything that happened. I want to apologize. Apologize for what? For never making the effort to truly get to know you. If I had known the kind of brave, hard-working woman you are, it would have been different. Jennifer was surprised by her mother-in-law's sincerity. Mrs. Elizabeth, you don't have to... Yes, I do. You were going through hardships and I didn't even know. What kind of mother-in-law am I? Mrs. Elizabeth sat beside Jennifer on the couch. Tell me, what was it like working there without anyone knowing who you were? Jennifer took a deep breath and began recounting her experience. She spoke about how she decided to work anonymously to prove her worth, about Margaret's daily humiliations, and how she pushed herself to be the best employee even while pregnant. I wanted so badly for you all to be proud of me, Jennifer said, her eyes welling up. My parents always taught me that work dignifies a person. When they passed, I promised I'd become a woman they'd be proud to see. Mrs. Elizabeth held her daughter-in-law's hands. My dear, we were already proud of you. The problem was we didn't know how to show it. Just then, Michael came home from work and found the two talking on the couch. He was surprised to see his mother there, as she rarely visited their apartment. Mom, is everything okay? Everything's wonderful, son. I was getting to know my daughter-in-law better. Did you know she graduated top of her class in business administration? Michael smiled, sitting beside them. Yes, Mom. I've always said I married the smartest woman I've ever met. And did you know she speaks 3 languages? Mom, Jennifer laughed, blushing. You're exaggerating. No, I'm not. I'm finally meeting the daughter-in-law I should have known all along. Their conversation was interrupted by Michael's phone ringing. It was Richard, with updates about the investigation. Son, I need you both to come to the office. We have news about the Margaret case. When they arrived at the pharmacy, they found Richard in his office with Amanda, the auditor, and 3 women Jennifer didn't know. Jennifer, these are Sarah, Rebecca, and Christina. They were also fired by Margaret when they were pregnant. Richard explained. Sarah, a woman in her 30s, stepped forward. When we heard about your case, we decided to speak up too. Margaret did the same thing to us. She threatened us to keep us from telling anyone. Threatened how? Michael asked. Rebecca, who looked younger, answered. She said if we pursued our rights, she'd spread rumors that we were problematic employees, that no company in the area would hire us. And you believed it? We were desperate, said Christina. Pregnant, jobless, afraid of not finding another job. It was easier to accept what she offered and try to start over somewhere else. Amanda, the auditor, showed some documents to Richard. Mr. Reynolds, we discovered that Margaret falsified reports for all these employees. She created fake negative evaluations to justify the dismissals. Not only that, Sarah continued, she forced us to sign a document saying we resigned voluntarily. That way, the company wouldn't have to pay maternity benefits. Richard was visibly shaken. His company had become a place of injustice under his own leadership. Ladies, I want you to know this doesn't reflect my company's values. We'll correct every one of these wrongs. Mr. Reynolds, Jennifer said, I don't just want corrections. I want to make sure no other women go through what we did. What do you suggest? That we create a clear policy protecting pregnant employees, that we train managers on labor rights, that we turn your company into an example of how working women should be treated. Mrs. Elizabeth, who had accompanied the group to the company, was moved by her daughter-in-law's words. Richard, listen to what this young woman is saying. She doesn't want revenge. She wants justice. At that moment, Margaret appeared at the office door. She had been summoned to explain the uncovered irregularities. Mr. Reynolds, I can explain everything. Those women are lying, trying to extort money from the company, she said, trying to sound convincing. Margaret, we have recordings, forged documents, witnesses. There's no point denying it, Amanda said, presenting the evidence. Not only that, Richard continued, we found out you diverted maternity benefits into your own bonuses. Margaret's face paled again. She looked at the 4 pregnant women she had wronged and realized her scheme had been completely exposed. Mr. Reynolds, I can return the money. We can settle this quietly, she said, trying to negotiate. Margaret, this isn't just about money. It's about human dignity, Jennifer said, standing up. You humiliated women for bringing life into this world. That's priceless. Listen here, you little upstart. If you hadn't hidden behind the boss's last name. Enough, Richard shouted. Margaret, you're fired for cause. And we'll take all necessary legal action to hold you accountable for the damages. Margaret tried to protest, but Richard had already called security to escort her out. After she left, the atmosphere lightened. The 4 women hugged, finally feeling justice had been served. What now? Sarah asked. Now we rebuild this company the right way, Richard said. Jennifer, would you be interested in helping me with that? How so? I want to create a human resources department focused on working women's rights, and I can't think of anyone better to lead it than you. Jennifer looked at her husband and mother-in-law, who smiled encouragingly. Mr. Reynolds, I accept, but on one condition. What? That the other women are rehired too, with all the rights they were denied. Agreed. And more. We'll set up a support fund for pregnant working women. Nothing like this will ever happen in my company again. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, continuing. 3 months later, Jennifer gave birth to a beautiful baby girl named Emma in honor of her grandmother. The delivery went smoothly, and the whole family was at the hospital to welcome the newest member. Mrs. Elizabeth held her granddaughter with tears in her eyes. Richard, look at the gift God has given us. A beautiful granddaughter and a wonderful daughter-in-law. It's true, Emma. This little girl will grow up in a better world because of her mother's courage. Jennifer was still in the hospital when she received a special visit. Sarah, Rebecca, and Christina showed up with bouquets of flowers and gifts for the baby. How's our boss doing? Sarah teased. You're all crazy, Jennifer laughed. I can't wait to get back and work together again. The company is full of changes, Rebecca said. Your father-in-law hired a consulting firm specializing in women's rights. They're overhauling all the processes. And the best part, Christina added, Other companies in the area are asking to learn about the project. You're becoming a reference. Michael walked into the room just then, carrying coffee for everyone. Ladies, don't whisper too much in my wife's ear. She's still recovering, he joked. Michael, your wife is a warrior, Sarah said. If it weren't for her courage, we'd still be swallowing injustice in silence. A few days later, Jennifer was discharged from the hospital and could finally take little Emma home. The apartment had been decorated by her mother-in-law, who had turned out to be a completely doting grandmother. Mrs. Elizabeth, you didn't have to do all this, Jennifer said, seeing the crib set up and the nursery perfectly arranged. Of course I did. She's my first granddaughter. And besides, you'll need all the help you can get when you go back to work. You'll help me with Emma? Oh no, I'm going to enjoy my granddaughter while you change the corporate world, Mrs. Elizabeth laughed. Richard appeared at the door with a large package. Jennifer, I brought you a gift. When she opened it, she found a plaque that read, Jennifer Miller Reynolds, Director of Inclusion and Working Women's Rights. Richard, this is official. When you return from maternity leave, you'll take this position. It's already approved by the company's board. Jennifer was moved. She had finally achieved the professional recognition she'd always dreamed of, but in a way she'd never imagined. 2 weeks later, she received an unexpected call. It was from a journalist at a major New York City newspaper. Jennifer, my name is Jessica Brown. I'm a reporter for the Morning Post. I'd like to do a story about your case. It's making waves in the business world. A story about me? About you and the changes your company is implementing. Many other businesses are interested in adopting the same model. Jennifer discussed the proposal with Richard and Michael. They all agreed it would be a great opportunity to inspire other companies to change their practices. The interview was published on the front page, with a photo of Jennifer holding her daughter next to the plaque of her new position. The headline read, From Prejudice to Leadership, How a Pregnant Employee Transformed a Company. The impact was immediate. Dozens of companies called to learn about the project. Universities invited Jennifer to give talks, and other women began speaking out about similar experiences at their jobs. Jennifer, you've become a symbol, Michael said, showing her the messages flooding her phone. I don't want to be a symbol, love. I want to be an example. I want other women to see that it's possible to fight for our rights. 3 months later, it was time for Jennifer to return to work. Little Emma would stay with her grandmother during the day. On her first day as Director of Inclusion, Jennifer was greeted with applause by all the company's employees. Richard had made sure to gather every branch to officially introduce the new director. Colleagues, said Richard at the microphone, let me introduce you to our new Director of Inclusion, Jennifer Miller Reynolds, a woman who turned an injustice into an opportunity for growth for our entire company. The applause was warm. Jennifer stepped onto the makeshift stage, her heart pounding. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Thank you, everyone. When I was unfairly dismissed from this company, I never imagined I'd return in this position, she began. But I've learned that the greatest victories come from the toughest challenges. Today, our company is a national leader in workplace inclusion for women. We've implemented extended paternity leave, on-site daycare, flexible hours for mothers, and a psychological support program for pregnant employees. The staff listened attentively as Jennifer continued. But the most important thing isn't the benefits we've created. It's the shift in mindset. No woman should be punished for bringing life into this world. No employee should fear pregnancy because of her job. Sarah, Rebecca, and Christina, now part of Jennifer's team, were moved by her words. After the presentation, Jennifer settled into her new office, spacious with a city view and even a small breastfeeding area. Thought of everything, said Michael, who had accompanied his wife on her first day. Your father considered every detail. Look at this, she said, pointing to a small refrigerator for storing breast milk. He even thought of this. Richard walked in just then. How are you feeling on your first day? Emotional and determined, Dad. I have so many plans for this department. What kind of plans? I want to create a mentorship program for women starting their careers, partner with vocational schools to offer internships, and establish an emergency fund for employees facing family hardships. Richard smiled proudly. Jennifer, you know you have my full support for any project you want to implement. And you have my eternal gratitude for giving me this opportunity. In the following months, Jennifer's department became the most sought after in the company. Employees from all branches called with questions, suggestions, or simply to thank her for the changes. "Director Jennifer," said Carol, who now worked directly with her, "we've received another partnership proposal. A university wants to study our model to create a course on inclusive management. Carol, schedule a meeting with them. The more people know about this project, the better." One day, Jennifer received an unexpected visitor. Margaret showed up at reception, asking to speak with her. "Director Mrs. Margaret Thompson is here to see you," the receptionist said. Jennifer hesitated but decided to meet her. When Margaret entered the office, she looked visibly worn down, thinner and tired. "Jennifer, thank you for seeing me. What do you want, Margaret?" "I came to apologize truly and to thank you." Jennifer was surprised. "Thank me?" "After I was fired, I had time to reflect on what I did. I sought therapy and realized I was repeating prejudices I'd faced when I was younger," Margaret explained. 15 years ago, when I got pregnant, I was also fired. Instead of fighting it, I ended up doing the same thing to other women. Jennifer listened silently. "I saw the newspaper article about you, how you turned injustice into something positive. I didn't have that courage." "Margaret, why are you telling me this?" "Because I've started working with a support group for women facing workplace discrimination, and I wanted to know if you'd be interested in partnering." Jennifer grew thoughtful. Part of her still felt anger over what she had been through, but another part recognized the sincerity in Margaret's remorse. "How would this partnership work? I could give talks about the mistakes I made, show other managers how prejudice can destroy careers, use my negative experience to create something positive." Jennifer discussed the proposal with Richard. After much reflection, they decided to accept. Margaret became one of the speakers in the company's awareness program, always sharing her own story as an example of what not to do. "Jennifer," Margaret said after her first talk, "thank you for giving me this chance to make amends." "Margaret, everyone deserves a second chance. What matters is learning from mistakes." A year after Emma's birth, Richard's company had become a national case study. Universities sent students for internships, other companies copied the model, and Jennifer became a sought-after speaker across the country. "Honey, another speaking invitation just came in," said Michael, showing an email on his phone. "Where from this time?" "Washington, D.C. The Department of Labor wants you to present the project to other business owners." Jennifer was nursing Emma while talking to her husband. "Michael, sometimes it all feels surreal. A year ago, I was being fired for being pregnant. Today, I'm being invited to speak in Washington, D.C. It's because you turned your pain into strength, love, and that inspires others." Mrs. Elizabeth entered the room just then, carrying a tray with snacks for the couple. "Jennifer, my dear, I have a surprise for you." "What surprise, Mrs. Elizabeth?" "Richard decided to create a foundation in your name, the Emma Jennifer Foundation for Working Women." Jennifer was moved to tears. "In my name?" "In the name of both Emmas in the family," said Richard, walking into the room. "My wife and my granddaughter. You two changed my life." The foundation was created to offer free legal support for women facing workplace discrimination, vocational training for mothers in vulnerable situations, and a mentorship program for women entrepreneurs. At the foundation's inauguration, Jennifer gave an emotional speech to hundreds of guests. "2 years ago, I was just a pregnant employee fighting to keep my job. Yet today, I'm here inaugurating a foundation that will help thousands of women claim their rights," she said, holding little Emma in her arms. "This foundation isn't just mine. It belongs to every woman who suffered discrimination and refused to stay silent. It belongs to the Sarahs, Rebeccas, and Christinas who had the courage to speak up. It belongs to Margaret, who had the courage to make amends. It belongs to all of you here today." The applause was overwhelming. Among the crowd were dozens of women who had benefited from the company's programs or simply been inspired by Jennifer's story. Sarah stepped onto the stage to speak on behalf of her colleagues. "Jennifer, when we met you on that difficult day at the company, you were as vulnerable as we were. But there was something different about you. a strength that inspired us. Today, we see the result of that strength multiplied in hundreds of other women. Rebecca continued, "You taught us that we shouldn't accept injustice in silence, that we can turn our pain into a fight and our fight into victory." Christina concluded, "Jennifer, you didn't just save our careers, you saved our dignity, and for that, we'll always be grateful." The event ended with a cocktail reception where Jennifer got to speak personally with many of the women present. Each had a story of overcoming adversity, and all credited her example as their inspiration. "Director Jennifer," said a young woman who approached her, "my name is Patricia. I work at a tech company and was facing discrimination for being pregnant. I read your story in the newspaper and found the courage to speak up. I managed to keep my job, and today I'm a coordinator in my field." "Patricia, that's wonderful to hear. Stories like yours make everything worth it." Another memorable case was Sylvia's, a 50-year-old woman who approached with tears in her eyes. "Jennifer, I spent my whole life accepting poor treatment at work just because I'm a woman. I thought it was normal. When I saw your speech on television, I realized it's never too late to fight for our rights. At 50, I started my own business." "Sylvia, you're an inspiration. It's never too late for a fresh start." At the end of the event, as Jennifer was packing up, she received an unexpected call. It was from a television producer. "Jennifer, my name is Edward Thompson, a producer at National TV. We'd like to make a documentary about your story." "A documentary?" "Yes. We want to show how injustice can spark social change. Your story is inspiring women across the country." Jennifer discussed the proposal with her family. Everyone agreed it would be a great way to spread the message even further. The documentary was filmed over 3 months, showcasing Jennifer's daily life at the company, the foundation's activities, and testimonies from women inspired by her journey. "Jennifer," the director said, "what message would you like to leave for the women who will watch this film?" "That no injustice should be accepted in silence, that every woman deserves dignity at work, and that our individual struggles can become collective victories." The documentary aired nationwide and had a tremendous impact. Thousands of women shared their own stories on social media, sparking a national movement for awareness. "Love, look at this," Michael said, showing Jennifer his phone. "The documentary is trending on TweetShare. People are using the hashtag #DignityAtWork. This is incredible, Michael. Who knew our story would go this far?" 2 years after founding the foundation, Jennifer received a special invitation. The Department of Labor wanted to implement her model nationwide. "Jennifer," the secretary said during the meeting in Washington, D.C., "we'd like to partner with you to bring the Emma Jennifer Project to companies across the country. Would you consider being our special consultant?" "Madam Secretary, it would be an honor, but I have one condition." "What is it?" "That the program be mandatory for all companies with over 50 employees. It can't be optional." "Agreed. We'll draft specific legislation for this." The Emma Jennifer Act was passed in Congress 6 months later, establishing strict protections for working women and severe penalties for discriminatory companies. On the day the law was signed, Jennifer stood at the White House alongside Richard, Michael, Mrs. Elizabeth, little Emma, now 3 years old, Sarah, Rebecca, Christina, and even Margaret. "Jennifer," the president said, "this law will protect millions of American women. Your personal courage has become a national achievement." "Mr. President, this law isn't just the result of my fight. It's the result of every woman who refused to stay silent in the face of injustice." After the ceremony, the family gathered for a celebratory lunch. Richard raised a toast. "Jennifer, when you came into our family, I never imagined the gift God was giving us. You didn't just bring joy to our home, you brought change to the entire country." "Dad, I'm the one who's grateful. If you hadn't given me the chance to turn my pain into purpose, none of this would have happened." Mrs. Elizabeth, now 4 years old, looked around with curiosity. "Mummy, why is everyone talking about a law?" "Sweetheart, Mummy helped create a law to protect working women." "Like Grandma Emma." "That's right, my love. To protect all grandmas, all mummies, all women." The little girl smiled and went back to playing, unaware that one day she'd understand the importance of the legacy her mother had built. 5 years later, Jennifer was in her office at the foundation when she received a special visit. Emma, now 8 years old, came home from school bursting with excitement. "Mommy, Mommy, my teacher talked about you in history class." "About me?" "She said you're a national hero, that you created a law to protect women." Jennifer smiled and hugged her daughter. "Emma, Mommy isn't a hero. Mommy is just a woman who decided to fight for what's right. But Mommy, my teacher said because of you, so many women didn't lose their jobs." "That's true, sweetheart. And do you know what that taught me?" "What?" "That our actions might seem small, but the results can be huge. When you grow up, always remember to fight for what's fair." Emma promised she would remember and ran off to play in the foundation's garden. Jennifer watched her daughter through the window, reflecting on everything that had happened. In just a few years, her life had changed completely, from a discriminated employee to a respected director, from a victim to a national role model. Her phone rang. It was Sarah calling from the Boston branch, where she was now a manager. "Jennifer, I have good news for you." "What news?" "Remember Patricia, that girl who spoke to you at the foundation's opening?" "Of course. She just got promoted to tech director at her company. And guess what she said?" "What?" "That she wants to start a program inspired by ours for other women in tech." Jennifer smiled. This was how change happened. One person inspiring another, multiplying the impact. "Sarah, that's wonderful. It shows our work is creating a ripple effect." "Jennifer, you know you've changed thousands of women's lives, right?" "Sarah, we changed. Never forget it was our collective fight that made this happen." Hanging up, Jennifer picked up a photo on her desk, the day she'd been fired, walking out of the pharmacy with a box of her belongings and tears in her eyes. So many twists and turns, she thought. Who would have thought that terrible day would be the start of something so beautiful? Just then, Richard walked into the office. "Jennifer, I have a surprise." "What surprise now, Dad?" "The foundation won an International Human Rights Award. You'll represent the US at a global conference on working women's rights." "Dad, this is getting bigger than I ever imagined." "Jennifer, you planted a seed. Now you're harvesting a forest." That evening at home, Jennifer had dinner with her family as usual. Michael talked about his day at work. Emma chatted about school, and Mrs. Elizabeth, now 70, played with her granddaughter. "Michael," Jennifer said, "sometimes I wonder if all this is real." "Why, love?" "Remember when I walked out of that pharmacy, crying, pregnant, with no job? I never imagined it would lead me here." "Jennifer, it was your courage that turned that pain into victory. You could have stayed home mourning what happened, but you chose to fight. It wasn't just courage, Michael, it was anger. Anger at the injustice. And you turned that anger into strength to help others. That's what's admirable." Emma interrupted her parents' conversation. "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to help people like you do." "And how will you do that, sweetheart?" "I'll make laws to protect kids, like you made to protect mommies." Jennifer hugged her daughter, moved to tears. The seed of justice was being planted in the next generation. The end. Now tell me what you thought of this inspiring story of resilience and courage. Did Jennifer make the right choices by turning her pain into a fight? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other incredible stories like this one.